Hey everybody, it's Jason. Welcome back to the Mosaic Church Podcast. At the end of this podcast, please take a moment to connect with us on social media. It's a great place to learn more and to see what's happening at Mosaic. Most importantly, hope the following message encourages and inspires you to take a new step on your faith journey. Enjoy.
In 2018, we were preparing to plant Mosaic Church, and there's something that just got drilled into my heart as I sat there and processed. And when you start to create something from nothing, it takes time. And especially when you're planting a church. Church planting is unique. Church planting is like a roller coaster without a lap belt. That's the best way to describe it. It's kind of chaotic, and you have highs and lows. And I sat in my basement, and I started to pray about what we should really focus on, which is kind of a funny thing. If you are not familiar with church planting, you would say, well, don't you just focus on Sunday services? Like, this is what church is. And the answer is wrong. Because there's a million church services you just passed by on your way here, at least several, and you could have stopped at any of those doors. So it isn't about starting a new church service. We have plenty of those in the area. Yes, we're unique, being in an evangelical style to our area. Yes, we're unique in our non-denominational style of doing things. But you know what? That's just preference of style. Why are we starting a new church? And so I'm processing, and the vision statement took a long time to come out because God was stirring in me and those who were starting this church together with us something different. Yeah, I mean, some things look the same. Like, this looks the same if you're familiar with the church environment. But there was something different that was welling up inside of me. Like, I just had this thing that had to be like birth. And it took a long time, months and months, to come up with our vision statement, which is igniting a movement of radical love that transforms our community and the world. Sounds catchy. It's cute. Igniting a movement of radical love that transforms our community and the world. What are we really trying to do here? Is it creating a better version of a church service that you drove by? Is it actually trying to accomplish the goal of the church? Is it about taking care of ourselves? Is it about taking care of our community? Like, what are we trying to do? And so as I started to really dive into this igniting a movement of radical love that transforms our community and the world, every word was thought out, prayed over, processed over, because our community does not need another church. It needs a different church. And so this igniting a movement was very purposeful. We're starting something radical to American Christianity, and it's about radical love, which is the love of God for a group of people that don't deserve it, and the gospel. And we believe if we love like Jesus loves, we can change Slinger, Washington County, Southeast Wisconsin, and the world. But it doesn't come from a guy talking on a stage to give you all juiced up and ready to take on the world. You get in your cars, and now you're barbecuing for Memorial Day, totally not even thinking about what was said. It took something different. It took a group of people who want to be part of a movement of Christianity that looks different in our area. And so as I'm sitting here and processing this, I said, this sounds impossible, because this is why I feel it's impossible. We are asking you, depending on your faith journey and your background, right? Your faith journey, if you grew up in some certain sort of church or you're unchurched, we're asking you to probably do more than you've ever done before, because this is a movement of you taking on the role of Matthew 28, where Jesus says, go and make disciples of people everywhere. Go and make disciples. And so our whole church is built on the fact that you are going to make disciples. Now, how do you do that? Well, we're here to train you. We are a training ground. Think of Mosaic as like a boot camp of how do I learn and grow and be transformed so that I can take this into a world that so desperately wants and desires it. It's a completely different mode that I come on Sunday. We have really good coffee. Facts, I do like our coffee. My wife makes it. Thank you, boo. And others, thank you for your team. We make delicious coffee. We have normally a nice temperature here. Sometimes the furnace gets a little too hot, it gets a little too cold, but typically we're comfortable. We have nice chairs. We have beautiful worship. Hopefully I give a decent speech, and then you go home. I've been doing that for 20 years. I wasn't interested anymore because my faith journey has exploded, not from being a pastor, but from looking at my life as a missionary. Let me say this again. I see my life as a missionary, not as a guy who creates Sunday services for you. Now, if this is unique, I understand, because as I sat in my basement and processed this, it was unique to me too. I had to dig into what God was actually asking of me and of us as a church plant. Think about this for a second. If you come to a service and you leave, usually these are the things that we like to tell ourselves, like, oh man, that was a good sermon. I was encouraged. It challenged me. Man, that was really good worship. I could really focus in on the Lord. Hopefully, and sometimes, not my favorite songs, not my favorite sermon. That's okay. We walk away with this kind of thought process of how did this impact me? And I heard this quote that came out that I've just been ruminating on nonstop. When you leave a Sunday service or a time encountering God, you now have on our iPhones, and we can Spotify all great worship music. When I am done engaging, am I asking the question, how do I feel? Or am I asking the question, I wonder how God feels that I just did that? Like, do you think on a Sunday morning, have you ever thought this? And if you don't, you're like, oh, guilty. Neither did I till this guy said it. When you walk out the door, I wonder how God felt about his family getting together and having a little reunion on Sunday. Is Jesus just like jaw dropped of like, man, my kids were worshiping and their whole heart was focused on me, and they're learning the word to be transformed because they want to be part of our movement. And is he like jaw dropped, or like, wow, they came to consume and feed themselves, and that was it? Now, again, if you have never thought that, neither have I. It changed my heart, because when we ask how God feels or how God engages, that's worship. That's worship. We worship by the hearing. We're like, God, you're so good, or God, I'm so broken, and God, the word is so convicting. And we talk about him, or do we talk about myself? And in my church experience, I was a mega church pastor most of my career. It just feels like we're always just talking about ourselves. I know I did. I was always talking about myself. I'm like, man, we just can't do this anymore. I can't play this game anymore, because when I read the Word of God, I see a movement of Jesus that is like exciting and on the move, and like crazy things are happening around Jesus. And then Jesus goes up to heaven, and now we have most of these writings from Paul, and Paul's telling us about this movement of God that's happening and how we're supposed to live and what we're supposed to do. And I'm like, I want to be a part of that. Now, as a guy, I like adventure. I like the idea that God has put me as a soldier and a warrior on some sort of battleground. That's like, cool, let's go, God, right? That's just kind of the way I'm made. Singing songs, I enjoy singing songs. I enjoy worshiping. I enjoy hearing the word. But I want to do this and get ready to go into the field. That's why we're missionaries. And when I read Matthew 28 that says, Jesus goes and says, go and make disciples of people everywhere, I'm like, okay, you said it, so we're supposed to do it. But why haven't we done that? There's a huge word, big word, fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid people won't like me. I'm afraid people won't understand me. I'm afraid I don't know enough. I'm afraid I don't know what to say. Is that what this is about? Like fear? Are we afraid to actually like live out our faith? Or is the question maybe we're not prepared? Perhaps your church experience has not prepared you to be able to share. You're not ready to be able to talk. I've never learned about this. You're like, Jason, slow down, because you are sharing things that are terrifying because I don't even know what to say or do. And that's why Mosaic is a training ground. Those of you who've been in our small groups know that we have been studying and learning about growing and going. And I'm super excited. I don't want to give you too much information what's coming, but we have a discipleship team that is building an unbelievable on-ramp for you to start this process. I don't want to give away the cookies too quickly, but let me tell you, no matter where you are on your faith journey, We have considered you. We have thought about you. And we want you to get moving onto the mission of our church family. Because on mission changes everything. It changes the way I look at Sundays. It changes the way I look at my work. It changes the way I recreate. When I say I live a life on mission, it changes everything. On mission is huge for us to understand, because when I live on mission, my engagement here looks different. This is what church is for. Faith community is for this. We become a place where we look upward and outward as we grow and are transformed inward. Let me say this again, because I really want you to nail this. The church is a place for us to look upward and outward as we grow and are transformed inward. I think in our typical church, we've done a pretty decent job at times looking upward. I think we do a lot of a good job looking inward. Where I think the American church has struggled is looking outward. We have okay looking to God, we're okay looking at ourselves, but now we see out there as scary, or as I don't know what to say. I don't know if I believe this. But this is where it gets really interesting. When you decide to live on mission, and maybe this is part of why we don't do it, when you decide to live on mission, it's going to cost you something. Not just time, not just money, not just resources. When you live on mission, it's going to cost you something, because it cost Jesus something. When you live on mission, like, the purpose of my day is not about what am I getting out of this. The purpose of my day is, how can I serve? Years ago, I was sitting with my then mentor and discipler, and we're still connected. He's still discipling me. He's part of a movement called Navigators. Anyone in the church community have ever heard the Navigators before? Very intensive study of growing and discipleship. And he had met with me when I was young, my early 20s, and said, look, I want to invest in the next generation of young men. And so I said, dude, I'm in. And we sat down on some of our first things. He had all these sayings, these things that just were sticky. One of the things that he said that was so sticky to me that I've never, ever dropped, he said this: every moment is an opportunity for ministry. Don't waste a second. Every moment is an opportunity for ministry. Don't waste a second. He went on to tell me, everything that he does, every hobby he has, he relates to ministry. He had his shooting guns ministry, where he would take people and hunt coyotes and all these crazy things. He had his golf ministry. He had his ministry of taking at-risk youth and going to baseball games with them. We had a softball team, and he's always inviting these teens that were troubled teens onto our team, and they weren't very good, so I was getting frustrated. But he kept inviting all these kids on our team because he wanted to live life with them and show them, I'm not playing softball unless it's ministry. I'm not golfing unless it's ministry. Because his mindset isn't trying to sell the person a used car, hey, now that I got you here, can I give you 5 reasons to follow Jesus Christ? That's not what he was doing. He was bringing people into his lives to build relationships, to have conversation, and to be there. At times, he would say something like, man, this sounds hard. On my faith journey, let me share you where I'm at. Sometimes he would say, man, you just need Jesus. And other times he would say nothing. Good shot. Nice hit. And he would just love. And I'm watching him do this in real time. I watched him go through hardship in his family. I watched him every day take moments of his time for ministry. It's unbelievable. When we got together, we had time of connecting, but it was purposeful. He was training me. He was training me to say, look, Jason, here's the truth. I'm investing in you to invest in other people. If you do not, this is so amazing. If you don't go and make disciples, you have wasted my time. Wow, bro, that was harsh. He's like, you've wasted my time. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm dead serious, Jason. I'm doing this so that you go to make disciples that make disciples. I want you to see how I do it, and in my failures, and in my successes. That's how I pursue Christ, my study habits, what I'm reading, and I want you then to find your voice with God and make disciples that make disciples that make disciples. My mentor, Kurt, think about this, planted Mosaic Church, not me. Process that for a second. It wasn't me. It was him. I've told him that. He said, stop it. I said, no, listen, brother. You did that because you lived on mission with a young 20-something-year-old, and you took a chance on me. And you instilled in me this idea that Christianity never was meant to be sat in a building. It was a movement of growing to going. You taught us it was upward, inward, outward. Like you taught me that my job is huge, that I have to live a life on mission. So I started a church, thanks to you. God put this in my heart to create a group of people that live on mission. For those of you who know our ex-associate pastor, Nick Jankowski, and his lovely wife, Dawn, some of the best friends I've ever had, why did I send them and not fight harder to keep them? Because I sat there, I'm like, okay, I can figure out a way to keep these guys here. We've got to find a way, right? I could start scheming and thinking of keeping my best friend here. You know what it's like to launch a church with someone you've been friends with the years before? It makes really hard, just hard. It did, especially if you know Nick. And so Nick and I could have said, no, you've got to stay. And I said, Nick, it's your time to go. If I keep you, I'm sinning. I've been with you. I've trained you. I've built you for what I can for this season. Now you go and launch another church. And now as stories of Mosaic Durham are starting to come out, we're hearing people that would not have been reached with people who would not have known if we kept them for ourselves. And selfish Jason, and many of you are like, that's okay, bring them back, right? I'm not just saying a vision statement. My dear friends, I'm doing everything I can to model this in front of you every single day. You ask the question, why is Jason always talking about coaching? Why is Jason always talking about Slinger Schools? Why is Jason gone on Sundays? Like, he's a pastor. What pastor is gone on Sundays? This is weird. Like, he should be here. The Sunday I decide to show up, he better be here. And y'all know who you are, right? If I'm here, he better be here. Do you know what an odd conversation that was as I sat down with our team and said, God is opening doors I can't dream of. And let me just share with you some of these. It's going to cost us something. It's going to cost us something. But right now, I have an opportunity. Listen to this. When I'm not here, or when I'm on vacation, which happens like once a year, if I'm not here in my coaching environment, I'm in a gym with over 1,000 teen girls and boys and parents. Over 1,000. Every single engagement that I have, if I'm gone on a Sunday, there's ministry happening because I don't coach to play volleyball. Now, it's a great sport and I love it. It's not about that. And I don't coach tennis because it's about tennis. It's about living on mission. That God has opened a door. God keeps opening all these odd doors. And you know what I'm asking? You guys don't even know this because I haven't shared with you. These relationships I'm building, I'm saying, God, are you showing us where our next church plant is? I have all this favor in this community. Are we supposed to move to a new church in Grafton, a new church in Cedarburg, a new church in Kewaskum, a new church in Hartford? No, Hartford, you're good. I'm like, where are you doing, God? Like, I'm living on mission. And so when I'm in this gym with over 1,000 people, as I'm walking, I'm stopped every X amount of feet because I have a relationship there, and I ask how they're doing to a coach, to a club director, to a student. It is unbelievable. I walk away in awe every single time. Every single time. Does every conversation lead to me talking about Jesus? No. But I'm going to tell you a lot do, because it's just who I am. I'm living on mission. I'm not making up something to be able to just go and do it. I'm actually doing what my mentor taught me. If you have a skill, craft, hobby, time, neighbor, work environment, mom group, it does not matter what you have. Every moment is an opportunity for ministry. Don't waste a second. And so today we're going to dig into our passage in 1 Peter 3:13 through 15. This is one of the verses that I've used as I live on mission. 1 Peter 3 is such a beautiful passage that sometimes we skip over because there's some difficulty to it and there's a cost to it. And this passage is so important to me because I cannot just go and do something for the sake of that hobby. If I'm doing something, coaching or recreating or golfing or hunting or whatever it is, and I'm on mission, the purpose of why I'm there is so focused. And that focus is upward and outward. take a look at 1 Peter 3:13 through 15. Peter says this, "Who is going to harm you if you're eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats, do not be frightened, but in your hearts revere Christ as your Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." Peter in this passage gives us listeners that are listening to it and us today a bold proclamation. And I'm going to have you to read between the lines here. If you follow Jesus Christ, you must do good all of the time. Look at the passage again. Who's going to harm you if you're eager to do good? But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. We have to do good all of the time. And so what is good? Good is kingdom-minded focus. The way of God. When you read the scriptures of Jesus, if you've ever read the Gospels, Jesus talks about the kingdom of God a lot. It is his moral code, the way we are supposed to live here on earth. So Jesus gives us the answer. This is what good looks like. Now we need to do good, and the way that we do good is we do it among people who do not believe what you believe. They don't have the same political stance. Who does anymore? They don't have the same theology. They might believe different things from you. They most likely don't attend church. And in my ecosphere, the majority of the people I engage with are people who are not going to set foot into a church building. Funny enough, I've been doing this for a while. You think like all these relationships would let's just pack the place to hear Jason speak. No, they're not interested in that. They're not interested in a speech from me. What's interesting as I live my life on mission, they are attracted to the aroma and the character of Jesus Christ in me, not Jason. What I find fascinating is my patience, which I have more outside the home instead of inside my home. Sorry, fam. But my patience, they are attracted to love. They are attracted to the elements that God has transformed in me. It's not me. It is not truly Jason. It is the Spirit of God in me. Because as I'm sitting here caring for each one individually, each of my teams, each of the people I'm engaging with, if I go golfing, caring for the person who's in the cart with me, that's exactly what Kurt did. He lived out his faith, and the fruits of the Spirit were being shown to people. And so the attractiveness is to Christ. So I'm going to do good because now I'm showing Jesus and his ways. Not everyone accepts it. I've gone through a ton of garbage. I have been attacked by people. And the word here has been so encouraging because even if you suffer for what is right, you are blessed. I have suffered for doing right because not everyone agrees. You know what I know it's super funny? Those in church environments who may be a little different, they say, I try to avoid answering the question, what do you do for a living? Because as soon as I say pastor, like, oh, so sorry, I swear all the time. I'm like, I don't care. You're your mouth. That's, just kidding. As soon as I say pastor, just like you would, everything changes. Whoa, this guy is totally different from me. No matter how much I've lived with them, no matter how much I've seen, this guy is different from me. One person I've been connected with said, Jason, I started listening to your podcasts. I'm like, ooh, cool. Like, which ones? She's like, all of them. I start streaming your podcast. And I said, am I any different? She goes, that's what's fascinating. You're the same Jason when you talk than the one that I see in our environment. I'm the same guy. So like the Jason that's super energetic and like super fun and like all the time, I'm like that when I coach. You can probably imagine that, right? And I'm over competitive. That's my struggle. We'll talk about that another day. But I love it because there's a purpose for why I'm doing these things, which is to live on mission. And when we hear this and I live out the ways of Jesus, I get to show a world that's not going to see it unless I'm there. If I'm not there, who is showing them what Jesus looks like? In each of your environments, however God created you, your uniqueness, You can show the world Jesus Christ by your life when you live the moral code of God or the kingdom of God in a world that doesn't believe in it, not selling a pamphlet, but living the life of Jesus Christ. People are like, what is your deal, bro or sis? What is your deal? And that's the beauty of the next part. Next part is that I'm prepared to give a response for the hope that I have. It's pretty simple. It's so simple. Like, why are you like this? I'm like, tell you what, man, I'm just a knucklehead, but man, this whole Jesus thing, like he started a movement that loved people that were unlovable, seemingly, and I want to be a part of that. Changes the way people think about Christianity when you speak that way. Oh, you want to know the hope I have? Come to my church on Sunday. Like, what? I mean, back in the 80s, maybe that worked, but now people are so skeptical of everything, and of course, I invite people to church, and you can too with people who are there, but that's not my first conversation. My first conversation is, I want you to know Jesus, because Jesus is the answer, and then go to some great Bible-believing church. I don't want to break your hearts too much, but I don't invite people to come here that often, unless they live in the area. What do I invite people to is I say, you need to get and find an awesome faith community that teaches the Word of God that you can learn and grow. This is not about growing Mosaic Church at all. It's not about that. It's about creating a movement of love. You see the difference? Because in our American mindset, you're probably thinking, well, if Jason grows the church, then we can get bigger buildings, and bigger buildings means more programs, and more programs mean blah, 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 blah. I've been there, done that. Instead, what if 50 people started a movement of love in their ecosphere and their worlds that they live in and started to, slowly start to infiltrate our entire community of love with a ready response to be able to speak of the hope we have so that we can share the gospel of Jesus Christ and the hope that we have. So here's our challenge. Because honestly, the way of God is so sociologically different. The way of God is going to be in opposition, and the way of God actually many times is going to put us at a place of odds with people because they're going to see us as intolerant or old-fashioned or whatever words you want to say. Here's the problem. There was a movement, and there's kind of still some of a movement, is that as Christians, we separate ourselves from everybody, and we have our own Christian world. And if I just have Christian friends, and I just do Christian things, and I just watch Christian movies, and I have Christian t-shirts, and Christian, that this way I'm not going to get messed up by everybody else. There's the other side of the movement, is that we grow relationships with people who are not in the church, and we're like, oh, everything's okay, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. And so now I live with a group of people who don't have the same values that I have, but in this value system, I just do what their value system is, and so I look no different, and I'm not acting or living on mission. I'm living for myself. And there's been a tension in Christianity for years and years and years. If you're new to this, this is a little bit of our history. There's been a tension. Do I separate myself like a modern-day Christian Amish person, or do I just get up into club and get hammered? Like, which one is it? And the beauty of this is Jesus didn't say do either or. He said be among all people, and being among all people, hold the values of God and be a light in the darkness. I love being with you on Sunday. How much do I love you? I just drove 2 hours to be here today. I'm like, I get to be with my family. I was excited. I'm all fired up about this sermon, this series too. I love being in the gym on Sundays because those people aren't going to church. I love the fact that I had a conversation with a director of a club who said, Jason, I have this vision. What if we started meeting with club directors and started having all these different men and women start to gather in an online forum? And I said, let me add to that. What if we start thinking of chaplaincy and being available for people? Because sometimes people need someone safe to talk to, and they're not going to walk into church. But we could have safe places on Sundays. And we start to dream about how do we bring the world of Jesus into a world that doesn't want him at this point. Inside his ecosphere, yeah, there's believers, and there's a big mix, 1,000 people. But what I'm saying to you is that we have to be a light where there's darkness, living on mission every single day, living out the kingdom values. Now, if this is terrifying to you, I'm going to bring up another word, fear. You're afraid because perhaps you've never been trained. You're going to say, I hear the passage, but I'm not prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for the reason that you hope that you have. And if you have that fear, I understand that. Less than 3% of believers will ever share their faith, let alone anything about Jesus. Less than 3%. So like 2 of you in here. 2 of you at some point in your life, not every day. 2 out of this room will say, okay, I want to share what I believe with someone. And what's fascinating about this is that in our culture we've moved to, the guy on the stage does everything. The guy on the stage speaks, counsels, takes care of all of us, takes care of all of our needs, is in the community, has good relationships, has a perfect marriage, has perfect kids, blah, blah, blah. And somehow we've turned this role of the pastor as the one who does it all, and then we listen to that great speech, and we go home, and we're like, that was a good speech. But that is not what God has said. My job is to lead you. That's my job. My job is to point you in the right direction. So I'm pointing really hard right now. It is upward and outward. Inward is part of our training ground here at Mosaic. We are here to train you inward. We're here to prepare you to have the response that you have, like I said, in our small group and our discipleship ministry. But if you are not putting the light into a place that doesn't have it, my friends, what are we doing? Because Jesus has saved us. If you've accepted Christ as your Savior, there is salvation by calling on the name of Jesus. And then if you were in our last series, sanctification, becoming like Jesus. Sanctification, becoming more like Jesus and less like ourselves, means this. You are now doing what he said, and he never said, go to great speeches and go home and do nothing. He said, be transformed and go make disciples. A couple weeks ago, I showed up to across the street to the tennis courts. One of my boys was there. We're getting on the bus to get ready to go to a tennis match, and he just kind of looked downtrodden, and I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? And he doesn't say anything to me. He just hands me his tennis racket. That's kind of weird. I take a look, and it's completely smashed. And he goes and sits on the fence. He just puts his head down, his hands over his face. I know him. He's asked me some questions. We've had conversations about God and faith. I know that there's a faith journey there of some sort. And so he's opened those conversations, and so I just gave him some time. Now, if you've never been a teenage boy, which are all you ladies here, so let me explain to you what it's like being a teenage boy. Imagine trapping a fire dragon and shoving it into your chest. That's what testosterone feels like. Like, it's uncontrollable rage at times. Like, we just, rage out, and there's all these feelings I could see, and I know he's been on this journey. He's been trying to control this rage that's inside of there. And so he's a very emotional guy, and he's head down, crying. I gave him some time, and I walked over, and I said, hey, man, you okay? And he just said these words, I can't believe I just did that. And I said, I can't believe you just did that either, you idiot. Now go take 15 laps. Totally kidding. You believe that? No. I said, hey, man, can I share with you something? I said, I know that you have a beginning faith journey. We've talked about it. And I want to share something, a truth about following Jesus. When you accept Jesus, this is on a tennis court at Slinger High School, friends. When you accept Jesus, everything you have done is forgiven, everything you're doing is forgiven, and everything you will do is forgiven. This whole incident is forgiven, brother. Don't hold your head in shame. And he looked up to me. He's crying at this point. And I said, now, sin leaves scars. And what you have done has left you with no racket before we go to this meet. We'll find answers to that. But I know you have a faith journey. And part of your faith journey is we live out our faith both when we play sports and when we don't. Hear the conversation happening? Both when I'm on and off the court, no matter what, we always live out our faith journey. We have to listen and obey what God said because it's good. Now, you know I love you, and I consider this done. Let me know how I can help you. Walked away. gets up a little bit later, he comes over. He's still hurting. He comes by everybody and sits down. I said, hey, I found you a racket. He said, you can use mine. You can use my racket. Coach is right. Like, no, your racket sucks, coach. Like, hey, wait a minute. No, you can use my racket. He's like, no, I found one. And thank you. Now, I tell this story because this is frontline, real life, just happened stuff. What if I wasn't there? What if I wasn't there? What if I wasn't on the court at that moment? I mean, we can go into a lot of what ifs, right? But I was, because I intentionally put myself in a place that most pastors do not do, which is with unchurched people. And as I'm ministering to this young man, I'm ministering to the people of Mosaic, I'm ministering to administration, I'm ministering to all these groups of people, it's not like I'm sitting there like calculating, what am I going to say today? I have a ready response and prepared to share the hope that I have in Jesus Christ. And some days it's a whirlwind, sometimes it's like, let's play tennis. It's all over the place. But this one time at this one place, God did something so amazing. He blended, I was a youth pastor 13 years. He is now on my journey, blended youth ministry, which I love and have loved so much my whole life, and now has blended this influence as a pastor of Mosaic and a member of this community. He's brought these two together and said, let's put these two together. Let's put your passions that you love to do, and let's send you out. And it's going to cost something. It costs me a lot. It costs me a lot of my time. It costs my family time from me. It costs time from you at times. It costs something. Living on mission is going to cost something. So the question is, how did I just do what I did? So just real quickly, as you're processing this, I want you to think of a few things. Where can God call you on mission today? Don't wait. No more waiting. No more, I'll lose 20 pounds next year. Let's do it today. Let's live on mission today. Where can you start intentionally seeing yourself as a person, as a missionary living on mission, prepared to give a response for the hope that you have? Where? Okay, you've got that space. Now, how do I do this? This is really hard for Christians. I listen. I don't talk. I just listen. And people will tell the story. I'm like, hey, what's been going on, man? I can't tell you more times than not. I just say, hey, how are you doing? Or what's been going on? Or, hey, I heard you went through that hard thing. How can I help you? Just nice, kind. I ask questions and I listen. And as that person is sharing, and they start to share their story, I start to see a thread of the gospel inside of there and my faith journey. And I don't say, well, here's the 5 things you need to do to change your story. I say, hey, man, I haven't been through that, but in my faith journey, this is why I have my faith. And I share about Jesus in my life. Or I tell about God's story, how it intersects our story. And I make it's so simple because it's just who I am. If I was not pastoring, I would do the exact same thing. It's just I get to talk on Sundays and motivate you. I love it. To go and do something tremendous. There are more people out there than you know, if you are not living on mission, that just need hope and love. And that hope and love always points to Jesus Christ. More times than not, if people are believers, I'm showing them outside of Mosaic, they're like, man, this is crazy. I watched you X, Y, and Z. I don't know how you're so patient. And I said, bro, I don't know how I'm that patient either, but I'm telling you, it's my faith in Jesus Christ. I say that out loud. It's my faith that keeps me patient. It's my faith that keeps me resilient. It's my faith when that 15-year-old girl misses her serve for the 7th time. I just want to take her out of the game, and I'm patient, and I don't scream at her. Instead, I say, hey, we're going to keep working on that. You got it. And the dad says, how do you do that? And I said, I don't know, Jesus, bro. Like, because I'm super ultra competitive. And then there's times when I fail. There's times when I fail and I lose it. And the competition overtakes me, and wanting to win overtakes me. It's happened. And those are the moments I call a team together, and I ask for forgiveness to a bunch of young men and young women. I say, guys, forgive me. I shouldn't have gotten so over-competitive. I shouldn't have yelled like that. I just believe so much in you, but that's no excuse. There's no excuse. Forgive me. You want to see all jaws drop on the ground? Tell a 15-year-old that you're sorry. And so I'm modeling for them repentance and humility. Guys, The opportunities are endless. Your world, your ecosphere, however God has created you, is there to be able to live on mission. And I'm so excited about this series. Over the next course of 5 weeks, we're going to have 5 different people living on the front line, living out mission, sharing their story, both locally, to some who have given up their career to now go internationally, to people who's like, I'm international, but instead of doing that, I need to get into a public school because I can live on mission in a different country in a school. You're going to hear stuff that's going to challenge you more than you can even imagine. And my hope and prayer is this. This series will push you so hard that you start to move. If you're moving, I celebrate with you and say, let's keep going. Bring people along with you. Disciple others that they can disciple others. To those who've been in the faith a long time, disciple others that they can disciple others. To new people to the faith, you're like, this is a new journey for me. We're here. We're here to prepare and train you. I'm here to say this. Obviously, this gets me fired up, and I had a good cup of coffee. I'm so passionate about living on mission. I cannot see church any other way ever again. I just can't. It's like the whole curtain was pulled back from the Wizard of Oz, and I see what we're about. We're about making disciples that make disciples. I see we're about a community that comes together to grow inward and be transformed, to care for each other, to look upward and then go outward. Can't see it another way. Because in 2018, when we started to dream, we planted Mosaic Church. God puts a fire in me that's still here today. I love it. I'm proud to be your pastor, and I'm excited what this next year is going to bring us as we go and live on mission.
Once again, thank you so much for listening. If you live in Southeast Wisconsin, we would love to connect with you at our weekend gathering. For service time, directions, and to learn more about our vision to ignite a movement of love that transforms our community and the world, visit us at mosaicwi.com.